video I'm going to show you how to replace a bad or worn starter gear for a riding lawnmower. This is on a Briggs & Stratton engine. So here's the problem. When you turn it over, this is all you hear. So what's happened is the gear on the top of the starter motor stripped, so it can't turn over the motor. This is the starter here, and this is just a plastic cap that covers the gear. So there's two bolts you want to take out, and this just comes right off. In behind here you can see the starter gear that's completely stripped down. This is just made of plastic. So it looks like what's happened here is this is supposed to rotate down and out of the way of the flywheel once it's started. And the teeth are completely worn down because it looks like this has been stuck in the up position, so this was just grinding up against the flywheel. Next I'm going to disconnect the battery cable. Mine's under the seat, so you just undo the positive cable from the battery, and that way you won't get shocked or it won't try to turn over on you when you're working on it. On the bottom of the starter, this is where the power connector is. This is the power connector down here at the bottom of the starter, so I'm just going to try and get this off. That's just a rubber cap on there. Here's the power connector for the starter. Next I'm going to take out these two mounting bolts here, one on either side. So I've got those two mounting bolts out, the starter's off. And you can see here the gear is sitting at the bottom now where it should be. This little mechanism here just pushes it down. So we're going to take this cap off, get the screw out, and just lift the gear out, put a new gear on there, put it back together, and see how it works. So what it looks like here is there's a little pin that goes through here, and I think that's what's holding everything on here. So if I take this pin out, this whole metal piece here should lift right off, and I'll be able to get everything off. So I'm going to try and punch that out somehow. So I've lifted the cap and the spring out. This piece comes right off. Now you can see the pin that needs to come out, because that won't lift off until this metal piece comes off. So what I'm doing here is I've got a screw, and I'm just using a hammer to hammer the pin all the way through, and it seems to be working so far. It's almost out. So I've got the pin out. I just hammered it through a little bit and used some vice grips to pull it all the way through. You don't want to hammer on it too hard on the end of here, because this could bend the shaft in the end of the starter. So the pin's out. This should pull right off. There's a washer on here. And then the gear slips off. Okay, so this is the new gear for the starter. And the way this goes on is on the one side here, if you can see that, it's completely flush, it's flat. And that goes on the bottom here, closest to the starter. And on the other side, the teeth are kind of angled at the top, which allows it to grab onto the flywheel, so that's going to go on top. So the flat end, you just set that on there like that. That just kind of falls down. I'm also going to grease this thing a little bit just to make sure this slides down easy. So to put everything back together, gear goes on first, and the washer. This piece here, you're going to line up the hole for the pin and put the pin back in. Okay, pins back in there. Plastic piece goes on next. And the spring. And the spring cap. So this here, I think these tabs were originally out a little bit further to hold this in place, so I'm just going to pry these out a tiny bit and pop that back in there so it holds. I've just pried these tabs out a tiny bit, if you can see that, and hopefully that'll allow it to snap back into place. So when I put the clip back on this, one half of it kind of broke off when I hammered it back on, so what I did is I just got this piece of plastic. This is just like a fastener for a car body panel, and I basically just jammed it in there, so this holds the spring down all the way around, so that way it's not just held down on the one side, it was kind of coming up, so that way it's got the proper tension on it. Doesn't really matter what you use at the top, I guess, as long as the spring is about flush with the top of this, it should work fine. So this has been greased up and it seems to be sliding fairly well right now, so we'll just reinstall this, put the bolts back on, hook up the power for the starter, and reconnect the battery and see how it works.